Hello everybody, welcome to another product review. This time the White Knights watercolours, which are manufactured in Russia. They are a brand that many of you are aware of from various people's videos, various websites and so on. They are very inexpensive but are quite renowned for their very high quality and general good range of colour that they have. I believe the company that makes them is Nevskaya Palitra, something like that. I can't exactly remember the name of the company, but they are manufactured in Russia, and I have bought just 5 full pans from Jackson's in the UK, and they had them on sale. I think they were like £1.50 for a full pan, which is a brilliant price. So I got myself a cool triad first of all, and these were the paints I got. So bright blue, which is pigment blue 15:3, phthalo blue, blue-green shade, the standard phthalo blue that you get. It's a lovely colour. I got rose, which is pigment red 81, which is rhodamine 6G, which, okay, it's not the most light fast colour in the world, but it's a lovely colour and it's not a standard one. I was deliberately trying actually not to buy pigment violet 19, the standard cool red. I wanted a little bit of variety. And I got lemon, which is pigment yellow 3, Hansa yellow 3, just the standard Hansa yellow we get in all lemon yellow paints. And I wanted 2 wild cards, so I got a blue, which is Blue Lake, which is pigment blue 1, Victoria blue. Now you do not see that pigment very often anymore. It's a nice warm blue. It's a good alternative to ultramarine in that regard. And I wanted a black. Don't use blacks often, but I love Vine Black PBK8 as a pigment. I think it's gorgeous. It often has a blue undertone. Now this one doesn't. This one has a green undertone. And the colour is Voronezhskaya Black, which I think is named after a town in the Oblast of Russia that White Knights are manufactured, I believe. I may not be perfectly correct there. So let's try some mixing triads. We'll do just a standard cool triad. And we're almost working in the CMYK universe here because of what we've got. So let's use them as cyan, yellow and magenta, which is what they really are. So I'm going to put the yellow down first because the yellow is always the lightest, and they lift beautifully easily. They've got a lot of pigment. They remind me a little bit of Schminker in regard to how easy you can get so much pigment off them and so little kind of effort is needed. I'm using a Daylon D12 size 12 round brush by Daler and Rowney, which is one of my go-to synthetic pigments. It's synthetic brushes. It's not a scrubby tough brush. Using very light strokes here. Now I'm going to add the bright blue, the phthalo blue, and again very light, so I'll put some of that down here so you can just see it, and I'll pop some down here so we can mix it with the rose. And I'm going to now mix some in, and I'm going to be very careful because the problem with phthalo blue is it tends to overload Hansa yellow. So I'm washing my brush out now, and I'm going to use that brush that I've washed, and I'm going to squeeze it with some paper just to get the moisture out so that I don't end up washing the colour away. If I want to add more blue I can, and that is a nice kind of cool green. Slight earthy, very slight earthiness to it, but it's a nice green on the whole. And now we'll add that rose kind of colour. They are slightly sticky paints. They have got honey in them. They don't sort of have a hard earthy surface like Daniel Smith or Winsor and Newton do when they're dry. I mean, look at that rhodamine pink. It's absolutely beautiful. They have a slightly sticky Schminker-like surface. They remind me a lot of Schminker in pigment load and in tone and in use. And okay, what we should get, remember in the CMYK universe, you mix magenta with yellow and you get red. And indeed, that's what we got. You don't get an orange when you mix those colours. So let's now mix it into the blue. And when you mix the magenta with the blue, you should get a purple, which is exactly what we got. So we've got a lovely cool green, a lovely deep, look at that gorgeous purple, and that beautiful orange red, which has got some granulation to it. So in the CMYK universe, those colours are amazing. I love them. Let's go back to the normal world, the world we know, and try out that brilliant blue, that warm blue. I have used these a very slight amount. I did a Yupo painting with them, like really briefly, and they do give a lot of colour. So this is that Victoria blue, which is just stunning. I mean, look at it. Absolutely lovely. And I'm going to add to it the yellow and the pink, and we should get an earthy green in theory and a fairly vivid purple. So I'm just putting some rows together here, and I'll mix those in, and we are getting a fairly vivid purple. That's really nice actually. And just to remind you what the rows look like unmixed, some of it just dripped off onto my hand, so I'll just pick some of that up and put it there so you can see what the unmixed rows looked like. So I think very pretty, very pretty purple there by mixing the cool red or the magenta with the warm blue, and now we'll put the lemon yellow in with that warm. Oops, I've just contaminated the yellow with some magenta from my fingers, so I'm just going to wash that off. Sorry for doing this off screen, I just find it easier to, because I'm picking them up, I don't have them in a palette, so I'm just lifting them. Let's mix those in. Should get an earthy green, and that is a very earthy green. I mean, that is a good olive green. That's not bad at all. It may look a bit grey from the camera because some greens don't pick up very well on camera, so I think you might not see the greenness of it. And no, you can see that that's a green. It's an olive green. It's a mucky, dirty green. But hey, it's a nice green. So really nice set on the whole, because we can have these vivid colours, which is what I wanted, and then we can have earthy colours as well. So that's nice. Let's consider that black. The Nevskaya black, the vine black. I've got here another sheet of paper. Now I'm working on Langton Rough from Winsor & Newton, no, from Dale & Rowney. It is not Langton Prestige, it's just the chemical pulp paper. That's what I've been using for all my swatching here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put down some of those four primaries in no real order. We'll put the brilliant, the bright blue, the phthalo blue down here. And I'm going to blacken them all. I'm going to add black to them and we'll see what it does. The lemon, which has got a bit of blue in it because I didn't wash my brush very well. Will you forgive me for that? Or do I have to redo it? I'm not redoing it. You can get over that, those of you that'll be really upset that I did that. But because they are a honey-based paint, they are quite sticky, so getting them off your brush again requires a little more work than you may be used to. The rose next. And we'll look in a moment at what their flow is like. We'll sort of do that last. And then the brilliant blue, that... oops, I've done the wrong blue. I should have done Blue Lake. Oh, damn it. Well, first of all, let's see what happens if you mix the two blues together. One blue and a cool blue together will very often give you a neutralised blue, and that gives you kind of a cobalt blue. Some versatility there. What I'll do is on this side of the paper, I'll do the Blue Lake, the warm blue, okay, so that we've got it. And now what I'm going to do is, first of all, on its own, I'm going to have to turn the page, on its own I'm going to put some of that Watercolour black so that you can see it. Okay, it's not a black, dark black. It's quite a soft brown green tinged black, as vine black often is. I like vine black to have an undertone of blue really, but this has got a brown undertone. It's pretty. I like it. So let's go to all these colours now and add black to them. And adding black to watercolours, people are like, oh, you don't use black in watercolour. Well, you don't. Ordinarily, one would not. But it can be really useful for certain effects. And adding a bit of granulation to colours is one of them. I like it a lot, just very subtle here and there. The other time you would use it, and you wouldn't use this black, you would want a Mars black or a carbon black or a lamp black, is when you want to paint silhouette, but you want it to have that cartoonish quality or that very harsh quality that you would not be able to get by mixing your primaries together. So yeah, look at that. Just adds a little granulation. It's not adding a lot because it's not a dark, dark, dark black. I'm just adding it to the rose, which I'm aware is off camera. Yes, it is. I'll flip that again. Okay, so I've just added it to the rose. And the one of these colours that is the most sticky is the phthalo blue, for getting it off your brush, I think. Add it into the yellow there, and that will give me a mucky, muddy yellow, but I can see why that might be useful. And finally into the phthalo blue. So that, just to remind you, the blues that we've used here are phthalo blue, lemon, rose. This blue is a mixture of phthalo blue and blue lake, and then this blue, the warmer blue, was just straight a blue lake. Now, I want to see what happens if we mix the CMYK, the CMY, I'm not adding any K to it. Oh no, maybe we should. CMY primaries together. Let's see how that goes. So first of all, we mix the yellow with phthalo blue to make a fairly vivid green, and the green being the complement of red. If we add some rose, in theory, we can make a black. And oh, we can. Okay, that's still got a very purple tinge. Now that means we haven't got enough yellow. So remember, when you're mixing a neutral, if you've got a tinge like this, we've got a very, very red or purple undertone, you add the complement, so in this case, yellow. And that should help to neutralise it down. It's probably going to come out quite brown. Yeah, it is. Probably because I've added a little bit too much, and it probably wants a little bit more blue. So it's got a little orange to it now. The first time I ever mixed these paints, so I'm not really fully comfortable with the sort of pigment loads and how much of each gives an equivalent amount of pigment, but that's doing it now. That's giving me a nice soft muted grey. I don't know if you can really appreciate that on the camera. I think you can. That is a soft and muted grey. So it is possible to get a chromatic neutral that's pretty nice. Let's see what happens if we add Nevskaya black into that. So when you do CMYK printing, you do have a black. That's what the K is. And that makes it even more black. So I'm just going to mix that over half. And oh yeah, you can see that side is more black than that side. So yes, I do think that was a good choice. I think as a triad, they're pretty cool paints that I chose. I'm pleased with how they mix. I'm pleased with how they look. Let's think about the quality here. These are beautiful single pigment paints. They have got very nice pigment loads. The one thing we haven't addressed is whether they have good flow or not. Let's have a look. I could compare them with other brands at this point, and I think I will, just to kind of get an idea or a feel. Switching papers for a moment, because I'm just grabbing what's near. This is a Winsor & Newton artist watercolour paper that I really don't like. I think it's too rough, and it seems to upset, makes a scratchy noise with my brushes, and I don't like it. So I'm aware my paint water is a bit dirty, but that doesn't matter. Okay, I'm going to put down a couple of puddles there, maybe 3. And I'm just going to put into the first one some of the rose, just at one edge. And I'm going to put some core, which has obviously got a really high flow, I think an uncontrollable flow. And I'm going to use a quinacridone magenta by core. And again, dried paint in a palette, not a pre-bought pan in this case. and you can see it's got an uncontrollable flow. It's gone in both directions really rapidly, and that's what the thing I really don't like about Core is that controlling that flow. You cannot control that flow with Core, especially if you live in a soft water area. I mean, look at it, it's already coloured the whole puddle. Not what I wanted. So while that one's still moving, I'll show you Schminke, because that, to me, is the most similar consistency of paint. And I'm using Permanent Carmine, which is a PV19, same as most quinacridone roses, I suppose, are. So we have got three completely different pigments here, but Schminke formulate their base so that every single colour gets a individual base with an individual amount of detergent or humectant or extender or whatever they put in them. They're all bespoke bases to each pigment. So you can see the White Nights one hasn't really moved a lot. Let's just see if that's the case with the sort of the phthalo blue. This is a rough paper, and paints usually will move on a rough paper quite well because they can shoot down the little valleys with capillary action. So Schminke has moved, but it's not uncontrollable. Let's just zoom out. So Schminke, we have movement, it's not uncontrollable. Core, very uncontrollable. White Nights, really not much movement at all. And then the White Nights blue, not much movement. So let's try some Oxgall and see what difference that makes. I'm going to apply it with a silicone tool because I don't want to get it into the brush that I'm using. Okay, so adding that breaks the surface tension. It's just a detergent derived from abattoir waste, bile. Okay, so that really made the blue move, okay. Didn't do so well with the rose. That may be because it's a little bit more dry, perhaps. Okay, yeah, so that has worked. So I would say if you want flow and flux like that, use some Oxgall. You will not go wrong by doing that. But if you want really good control for, you know, botanical paintings or whatever, just use them as they are. Fantastic control, extremely good value for money, which is a great thing, and generally beautiful colours. I think the selection of colours they have is fantastic. I really can't fault them on that. One comment I will make, and it's not my own experience of them, but Jackson's in the UK, the paint shop in London, the art shop in London, that many of you know, in their beautiful watercolour catalogue that came out this summer, which is gorgeous, work of art in itself, they did state that the consistency between the colours, or between the same colour bought in different batches, I'm not sure which one they meant, isn't always perfect with White Nights, but the price kind of offsets that. I haven't experienced that. I think all the colours are amazing that I've tried, and okay, I've tried 5, it's like 10% of their range or something like that, but I will be going back to them. They're a beautiful, high quality professional paint. They've got honey in them, they're sticky, they're like Schminke in many regards, but they do need Oxgall if you want, you know, flow and it to spread on its own, wet into wet. What I would say about them is my intention is to get some more and use them when I paint on plein air in the summer, because they're so economical. I won't feel bad, because when I paint on plein air, I paint dozens of sketches that mostly end up, you know, in the bin or whatever, don't get used. So I tend to use cheap paint. I tend to use Cotman or even Prima's Decadent Pie set or whatever. I will use those in the field because I don't feel bad if I drop them in the water or whatever, because they're so cheap. But these are the same kind of price as Cotman, but you're getting professional quality, and really good professional quality. It's the advantages of being manufactured in Russia, I suppose. I'm probably going to get some prick right down there in the comments that I'm like a sort of trying to subvert the West by painting red with Russian paints or whatever. Some lunatic will probably write that, but such is the world we now live in, where everything is being blamed on Russia. It's like the 50s all over again. So these are good full pans. I think they're poured like Schminke are, rather than being extruded, which means they probably won't last quite as long as an extruded pan from other manufacturers. But when you've used them and they dry really well. They shrink back down again, so you get a nice surface to use. They stay sticky, they stay wettable. I mean, I love them. This is the first outing they've really had, apart from a really very brief sort of sojourn I had with them. When I first got them, I didn't touch them for many weeks, and I was just desperate, and I wanted to play with them. And I've been redoing all my swatches recently, which I'll do another video about. So I swatched them out, and I thought, oh, these are really pretty. I mean, that rose is just so beautiful, and you know, what was there not to love about them? They have really great colour. I actually prefer that rhodamine rose to a lot of other colours, and it's more light fast than opera rose, remember. I'm going to pop some of this blue lake out, and someone's probably going to comment that, you know, Victoria blue is not terribly light fast, but these are really cheap paints that I'm not intending to use for you know, things that'll hang on the wall necessarily. But I like them, and actually the light fastness is not terrible. The light fastness is reasonably good for these pigments. The rhodamine is not brilliant, but you know, do your own tests if you're unsure. It's very hard to get paints that are truly 100% every colour is the highest light fastness rating. It's just not possible to do that. But they're great for art journaling, they're great for sketchbooks, they are great for hanging them behind UV glass, and as I said before many times, how many of us are doing artwork that is going to hang in the Louvre for the next 500 years? Very few of us. If you give a card to a relative, they hang it on the wall in front of a bright sunlit window. Firstly, your relative is an idiot, but secondly, it was a card from a relative. Get over yourself. You are not so impressive as an artist. You are not Da Vinci, you are not Van Gogh. Your work is not going to be hanging everywhere. And oddly, the people that I see the most comments about, that paint's not light fast, you can't use that brand, they've got non-light fast colours, are people that are not professional artists. So professional artists can use what the hell they like, as long as, you know, they're honest about it, how long it's going to last. But for the rest of us who are doing this semi-professionally, or just to make gifts for relatives, or whatever, it doesn't matter, because the lifetime of our work is not expected to be 500 years. If you give someone a greetings card that's painted in watercolour, it's an ephemeral item. They do not expect it to last 50 years, especially not in a bright sunlit window. It's not that kind of item. So just think about what you're actually using it for when you're deciding whether to completely dismiss a brand because they have a few non-light fast colours. Phthalo blue is phthalo blue, that is going to be light fast. The yellow is a Hansa yellow, it's going to be light fast. The rhodamine and the Victoria blue are not as light fast, but on the grand scheme of things, remember, every pigment we have today is better than the pigments they were using 300 years ago. And did their paintings last? Yes, they did. There are a few that used gamboge that have gone a slight brown colour, but you know, they lasted. People panic too much about light fastness in the context of the paints they use. So I would say lovely colours, lovely paints, nice restricted flow, but a bit of oxgall. You get a lovely flow with them. You can make beautiful colours with them. They mix really, really nicely. Pigment loads are great. They stay sticky, they wet beautifully. I really, really like White Nights. I was very, very, very pleasantly surprised by them. I was not expecting to like them. And now it's dried, you can really appreciate how black that chromatic neutral that we made by mixing the colours has actually ended up. Really very, very fantastic value. So if you go down there, you can find a link to my website where you can read a bit more about these paints, and you can find links to buy them in the UK, USA, and Canadians, if you want the links for Canada, just tell me. I don't usually put them up by default because they take me time and no one ever buys anything from Canada, but if you're in Canada and you want them, just put a comment below the video and I will put them up for you, I promise. And you'll be able to get better images of the swatches that I use as well over there, so you'll be able to learn more about them. Thank you all very much. Good evening.